Greetings all, welcome back to another session of Tuzi Talks. Today we're going to be talking about evaluating software to find out whether it's useful or not for you as a language teacher. We'll look at the approaches to evaluating software. We'll look at some frameworks for setting up so we can get a better picture of the type of evaluation that we're going to do. And then we'll also look at some of the objectives. A lot of this information is coming out of Levy and Stockwell's textbook, Call Design, so you may want to go look this up as we investigate evaluation. Let's jump right in here to the introduction, stuff that we're going to be evaluating. Well, call designers, call researchers, many of them actually enjoy playing with a new tool, seeing what it can do, and deciding whether they want to use it or not. That's kind of like some of the things that we do in evaluation. When you evaluate, you're checking out the quality or the effectiveness or the value of a particular program or site or system. Okay, evaluations have as its primary goal. Am I going to use this or not? Answering that question. Am I going to use this? Am I not going to use this? That's oftentimes what evaluating is for. It aims to identify the value of something. And if it's valuable enough, then you would decide to appropriate it into your program or into your materials development, right? Evaluations have a more specific audience in mind. You're not trying to buy a system or acquire a system that's going to deal with a lot of people. Oftentimes you're thinking about a specific audience, and for our purposes, oftentimes the audience is the student. Not always the case, but you're going to have a specific user in mind when you're looking at and evaluating some software. The goal, again, of evaluating something is to find out whether it works or not. Does it work for you? Does it fit what you need it to do? Okay, we're not trying to figure out whether, what the problem is with this software. Why doesn't it work? Or how can I make it better? No, I'm just evaluating it. Am I going to use this? Am I not going to use this? Okay. Research, on the other hand, does go into the why, or what's the cause, or trying to assess, the strengths and weaknesses type of thing. And so we're going to be evaluating. We're not doing any delving into research so that we can publish a paper or explain why we're doing something. We're just evaluating. Do I want to use this or don't I? Okay. Now, as a teacher or administrator, we can now become evaluators of software. Thank you to the PC world, where we can now dump programs onto our systems. Now, additionally, we can also use programs or tools or whatnot that are available on the web as well. Many times when we do evaluate something, we have a litany of things that we may want to do, kind of like a checklist. It's got to have this, it's got to be this way, it's got to have this capability, and if it doesn't have those things, well, then maybe we turn those off. We decide not to use the particular software. A good example is when I was working at a college in Pennsylvania. I had a group, some company come in. They were going to show everybody in the tech office, some new software, and so we all get together and they explain it to us and they show it to us how it works, and they asked us if we had any questions. My hand went up and I said, "Is this software internet accessible?" Okay, and their answer was no, and I was like, "That's it. That's a deal breaker for me." It was part of my checklist. On that checklist, there was one at the top that said, "It's got to be web accessible." Is it? And if it wasn't, that's gone. So checklists, you can have a whole bunch of criteria that you can put on a checklist, and in order to evaluate some software. You can also do surveys, so you're surveying people who've used it, or surveying companies who've used it, or actually sitting down and interviewing people. Surveys provide a richer description of the information, but in the end, you're still going to be deciding whether you're going to use this or not use this, adopt this or not adopt this. Again, the primary focus of these evaluations is to say how useful is this piece of software? Is it worth the time and effort to make it work? What's the ease of use of it? Is it easy to learn? Is it easy to set up? Is it easy to share with others, right? And then, of course, user perceptions. These are all things that we may want to investigate when we're doing evaluations. In addition to me doing an evaluation or my program doing an evaluation, you can get third-party evaluators. One that I can think of is Calico. Calico, as you know, is a consortium online that does a lot of work with Computer Assisted Language Learning. And they have in their publication something called software reviews. And they review software. You can then go into, for example, here in ESL, and here's all this software that they have reviewed. And these are people who, they play with the software, they explore with it, and then they write up an article about it. So you could use them to do some type of data collection as well. Calico would be good for for pedagogical validity, for curriculum adaptability, adapting this technology to your classroom and to your curriculum, provided that there would be a fit for it. May also look at efficiency or effectiveness of the particular software. Additionally, we can set up a framework for evaluating. Again, a framework is primarily to set up so that you've got a template so that you can look at all of the important components that you should be looking at when you do an evaluation. So we can look at the technical features, we can look at the activities or the teacher fit and the learner fit. Right? How does this fit in with your teacher? How does this fit in with your students' learning styles? How does it fit in with the activities that you want to create and or want to develop? And what are the technical features? Are they easy enough for students to learn? Is it going to require special hardware, software that your students may not have? Right? What are the technical aspects of this? Just to let you know, this Hubbard's framework can be used not only for PC-based software, but just for anything on the web or on the internet as well. Okay, so as a designer / evaluator of software, there are some points that we can focus on as far as evaluating the software in view of other things. We can look at just the software and its methodology. So what is the methodology of this particular software? So, for example, in Moodle, there's a sub-program called the Moodle Reader. So let's just go find it. And the Moodle Reader is can't find it. The Moodle Reader is a tool that allows you to read, have your students read textbooks, any different kind of textbook that there are, and then they can use those textbooks inside Moodle, and they can have questions answered for them. You see, the guy who developed the Moodle Reader was very into extensive reading. He still is. Excellent guy. Excellent product. I would use it if I were teaching ESL right now. It's a great little tool. A lot of schools have, a couple hundred readers, and they want to be able to test students on them, but of course that's a lot of questions to create. And Tom created a nice little program that sits inside Moodle that has a database of questions for all these hundreds of stories. One might surmise that one of the reasons he did this is because he has a strong affinity toward extensive graded reading, where students do a lot of reading by themselves and online. And so that would be one of the methods that you may want to think about, extensive graded reading, when you're looking at his particular tool. Maybe that tool, maybe you don't believe in extensive graded reading. Maybe you don't think that's a component that you should be adding. Or that's not the focus of what you want to spend your time and money. Well, then you wouldn't look at that. Or maybe it is. Maybe you love extensive graded reading and you want to be able to use all these questions that are pre-made that help students move systematically to more difficult language systems with this. It would fit your methodology, and so that would be a good thing. You could look at it that way. You could also look at it from a teacher and technology focus. Will this tool help me be a better teacher? Will this tool help me to have my students become more independent learners? Is it going to help the learning process? Is it going to help the teaching process? I, for example, really do like forums in my classes. What I try to do is teach students how to use a forum where you have a discussion back and forth online where students are forced to type. I like them because after students learn how to use them, I can push that off, and they don't have to do that in class anymore. So maybe I give them a topic and they need to discuss it. They discuss it not in class. They discuss it online. Or maybe they read a paper or an article or watch a commercial, and then you want them to interact. Okay? And if you put them in a classroom and you got a class of 20 people, not many people are going to be interacting. But you may be able to push that off into a forum. And in that sense, the forum is helping me be a better teacher because I'm taking an activity that does not require me and pushing it out of the class so that I can spend my time in class on activities or things that require me as a teacher. So that's one of the ways that I can use a technology, and I'm going to evaluate a technology because it's going to free me up to do things that are necessary for me. It's also possible that you can do an evaluation of some software because it's looking at a specific skill. It's looking at one of the 4 skills: reading, writing, listening, speaking, or it's looking at one of the databases, right? Pronunciation or grammar or vocabulary. And you can look at it and say, okay, how well does this system work? Does it really help in developing vocabulary? So, for example, I can go over here and look at Word Engine. You've probably never heard of Word Engine. It's a great little tool developed by some researchers out in Japan, and it's a systematic approach to learning vocabulary. We can come here and look at the site and say, okay, first of all, it's systematic. Is that a methodology that I'm going to believe in? But so I could also look at, okay, look at this particular tool, and is it going to help my students learn vocabulary? If that's one of the things that I'm going to be evaluating, this would be a good place to look, and I can use that when I'm going to evaluate a particular site like that. Lastly, I can get big and I can look at courseware. How well does a particular course content management system allow me to personalize training and or learning opportunities? Because I'm using this system, can I create individualized tests? Can I create individualized materials, individualized work to have personal training type of sessions because that system exists? So those are some things that I can evaluate. I can evaluate the methodology against the technology. I can evaluate the teacher fit, I guess you could say, against the technology. I can evaluate a language skill or the databases or a whole site. Number of things that I can look at. I want to look at a larger framework. I can look at Hubbard's as well, and I can look at these 3 areas. I can look at the teacher fit, the learner fit, and the procedures. And I'm looking at the teacher fit. I can look at the teacher's linguistic assumptions. Does this application fit that? Does it fit my learning assumptions or my design curricula? And I can see how maybe they can meld together. Maybe they will work together that way. I can look at the teacher fit. I can look at the learner fit. Does this particular software work well with these students' learning styles? Is this particular software too easy or too difficult? I can look at program difficulty. Is it easy to understand? I can look at the content of the site. And we go back to our vocabulary site here. This is a straight high-frequency vocabulary focus. Okay, but maybe I have students who are nursing students who are learning ESL, and they need to learn your standard core of vocabulary, but they also need specific medical-related, nursing-related vocabulary. So this site may not be sufficient because I'm looking at a specific sub-area. The content may not be what I want it to be. Maybe there are hardware and software restrictions. Maybe students are going to need to have an Apple computer, or they're going to need a headset, or something that will limit the use of the tool. Finally, I can look at some of the procedures. What control options are there for the student or for the teacher to be able to control the system? Again, if it's easier to use, it's going to be nicer for everyone. What's the screen layout? You look at this screen layout here, and you guys really don't have anything to do here. You're just looking at it. And if you look at a browser and you look at the screen layout, is it have all the parts that I need? Does it give me a variety of options? I go back to look at iTuzi, for example, and I enjoy iTuzi. One of the reasons why is because of the language button here. And there are a whole bunch of different language that I can use when I'm viewing the site. That's just providing me some options, right? What types of activities exist there? Are the activities only for a couple of the skills? Do they do only reading and writing? Do they also do listening and speaking? Okay. And finally, what kind of feedback, what kind of help do you provide? Does the system provide for your learners and for your teachers? if any, does it provide? So it's a larger framework. Another thing that you could look at is the Chappelles Framework. He's got it set up a little differently. He does have learner fit, right? Does it fit into the needs and opportunity? Does it fit in the needs of the students, and does it provide good opportunities? How does it fit with regard to meaning focus? Chappelle has more interest in focus on form. Some of Gass's ideas with interactionist theory, for example, he has more of a desire to have focus on meaning. And so, how much are the language learners focused on doing meaningful learning with a particular software? How authentic is the learning, right? What type of impact does it have on language learners? Let's just jump back into this word engine. This is not necessarily authentic language, but students definitely do progress, and you can see the positive impact that it does have. So how meaningful is this? I'm not sure it's necessarily as meaningful as normal text would be, but it's certainly a way that we could look at it. Lastly is practicality. How practical are the activities based on this resources that you have? And so this is a different way. This is Chappelle's way of looking at it. He does have some similar things with Hubbard, but there are also some other things that are different. Okay. All right, we look at the general idea of an evaluation framework. We can begin by looking at checklists and talk a little bit about the benefits that they are. They're simple and they're easy to set up. Okay, it's one of the nice things about a checklist, and so it's easy to have these things, just you can check them off rather quickly. Some researchers don't like them because they're oversimplified. Sometimes they lack reliability and validity or objectivity. Those things can be overcome, as well as any implicit bias that there might be in the system. They can be overcome, and so it's good that you have redundant systems in your checklists. You repeat a question several times in different ways to ensure some reliability. You may have raters who are going to rate things so that you can try to increase reliability or validity. You could also do surveys, okay, beyond just a checklist. Surveys provide a more rich description of what's going on. When I say rich, it's because it's a description. It's kind of like where they're giving you written description to help you to see more deeply and less number-wise what something is. Okay, so you could use a survey to do that. Just a note: call evaluators typically desire triangulated evaluation. As I mentioned before, we've got third-party, we've got checklists, we've got surveys, and so now we have 3 bits of data that we can use, and it provides a richer description and provides more validity because we've got 3 data sets instead of just 1. Again, you could also use third-party evaluators like Calico. The downside is that they typically have less of an intimate knowledge of your program and your information, but at the same time they're also more they're less biased because they're only evaluating the software against the software. They don't have any preconceived goals, desires, or expectations to their program. Okay, they can be more objective. Let's take a look at some of the objects of evaluation. I think I talked a little about this earlier. Evaluators, they have a focus. They're looking at a certain thing, certain specific things, and that's going to help us develop our evaluation criteria. I know, for example, I'm going to be looking for things that are web accessible, or I'm going to be looking at things that help students improve their core language, core vocabulary building. And so, because I have that focus, it's going to help me evaluate software, because I know those are 2 things I'm going to be including in the evaluation. Now, there are some applications that are easier to evaluate because they're small. Again, you look at word language. It's a nice site. Actually, I would recommend you using it because I do like the systematic approach to vocabulary study. They've done tons of research at this site to help make this a better site, to help get it very reliable. But it's going to be easier to evaluate because it's small. Go to another site like Dave's ESL Cafe, And you're looking at a site that has hundreds, nay, thousands of pages. And you've got resources for job hunters, resources for teachers, resources for students. There are hundreds and hundreds of pages here. There is no, you don't store information on this site like you would over at the Word engine, but you could use a system like this to, you could evaluate a system like this. It would take a lot more time because there's a lot more to investigate. There's a lot more to evaluate. Different sizes is going to cause that. Okay, Benigno and Trenton, their framework on what to evaluate when you're considering online courses is also interesting to look at. Basically, you can look at the participants' characteristics. You can look at their involvement. You can look at the communication between students. You can look at the activities that are available there. So you can take a site like iTuzi, which is a Moodle installation, and we can look at the users. And we can look at their strengths and weaknesses. We can look at how long they've been here, how long they use the system. We can look at the activities that's available to them so that we can find out what activities that they use faster, that they do better, and which ones they don't. Okay, that's for evaluating online things. We can also look at return on investment compared to face-to-face courses. Okay, we have a face-to-face course and we have an online course, and what's the pluses and minuses of these? This is happening very often right now because more and more schools are putting things online. Of course, there are some teachers who are resisting. They want face-to-face. They think you're losing something from a non-face-to-face, and you are. I mean, there's going to be comparisons, not only on the return on investment, but also just on the return on teaching, I guess you could say. Might also want to recommend that you use open source tools when doing stuff like this, because open source software doesn't cost anything. That's going to be better for handing out to your students if you're using software that you want them to use. You don't need to make them buy Microsoft Word. You could let them use OpenOffice. And that would be available to anyone in any language on any system. So that's the benefit of open source in that sense. Lastly, we're going to look at a general evaluation framework. We should recognize that a general framework is going to be better than just a checklist because it's going to provide a richer, layered descriptions, and things can be weighted when you have a general evaluation framework. You want to just build one up, okay? And again, collect data from multiple sources so you can do triangulation. You should also note that many of these frameworks that we're talking about, Hubbard's and Chappelles, are driven by the theory. Chappelles is driven by the focus on form, as I mentioned earlier. A focus on form, which comes from Doughty and Williams, and also from Gass and their interactionist theory. Because they have that focus within their framework, it's going to be a more meaningful framework because those primary methodological components are included. Okay, let's just do some recap. We're going to be evaluating software or sites or tools. We should always try to keep the learner in mind when we're trying to develop and or implement something. Remember also that both frameworks, the Hubbard framework, the Chappelles framework, both are good. Both have benefit. I would probably take ideas from both of them. I like the idea of learner fit and teacher fit. I like the idea of, is there a focus on form? Is there a focus on meaningful information? So you can take some from both of them, I would think. Remember that some of these templates are more general, some are more specific, some are for larger systems, some are for smaller systems, and so you just need to be consistent, be thoughtful when you're doing these evaluations. I'd recommend that you adopt a framework when you're considering some type of software. And let me just quick show you some other places where you might be interested. Beyond Calico, Hot Potatoes might be some software that you're interested in evaluating. And again, I recommend that you do download this and play with it, but then you can also evaluate it. How good is it for what you want to do? How helpful is it to you? How easy is it to use, type of thing. There's another place up here called ESL Gold. You may want to evaluate this site and see the benefits that are included here. ESL Gold looks at all areas of language. You've got listening, speaking, reading, writing, grammar, vocabulary. You've got business English pronunciation. A lot of different tools that you can use and your students can use to learn language, and you can evaluate something here. ELO, English Listening Lesson Library, has hundreds of listening library elements, probably set up in more of a functional approach to language learning. But here's one that you could come and evaluate. It's a listening site primarily. It's for listening. You could evaluate software like Rosetta Stone, which is not open source. It's software that you'd have to pay for. But how is this going to help your students' language learning abilities? Or how is it going to help your program become stronger? You could look at Randy's ESL Cyber Listening Lab, which has lots of listening activities here that students can use, right? You've got Caligo, which I showed you before, and I think that's all the ones that I have here to show you. Just to let you know that there are lots of software out there that you can use and you can evaluate. That's all I have for evaluations. I do hope that you go out there and you begin to evaluate software, see what would be good and what wouldn't be good according to these criteria, according to the needs in your own system. If you do have any questions, you can certainly give me a call. Talk to you later now. Bye-bye.